Welcome to Sting Stories. Today, we will listen and reflect on a meaningful story titled, The Good Samaritan, Love Without Borders. This is not only a familiar parable in the Bible, but also a timeless message, reminding us of the power of compassion, sharing, and love that overcomes all barriers. Let's join Sting Stories on a journey to explore this story and find profound lessons for each of our lives. Part 1, Introduction, the origin question. There are stories that do not stop within the framework of time and space, but also transcend centuries to become a light that illuminates human life. The parable of the Good Samaritan that Jesus told is one of those stories, a parable that is both simple and easy to understand, yet contains profound meaning, opening up to humanity a truth about boundless love. It all began with a dialogue. A lawyer approached Jesus, with a respectful appearance but hidden in his heart a challenge. "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus did not answer directly, but cleverly turned the question back to him. "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" The lawyer replied, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." Jesus nodded, confirming, "You have answered correctly. Do this and you will live." However, instead of stopping, the lawyer continued to ask a question that was both a justification and a test of the limits of love. "But who is my neighbor?" This question resonated not only in the ancient context, but also throughout history until today, becoming the door that opened to one of the most beautiful and moving parables, the parable of the Good Samaritan. Part 2, Historical and Social Context. To better understand the meaning of the story, we need to return to the Jewish context at that time. The Jews and the Samaritans had a long-standing enmity that lasted for many generations. After the kingdom of Israel was divided, the Samaritans built their own temple on Mount Gerizim instead of worshipping in Jerusalem. From then on, the Jews considered them heretics, unclean, and no longer pure in faith. That enmity did not stop at religious differences, but also penetrated deeply into social life. The Jews despised, avoided, and even cut off all communication with the Samaritans. In their eyes, the Samaritans were excluded people, not worthy of standing in the community of God's people. In that tense context, Jesus' choice of a Samaritan as the main character in the parable was a bold act. He broke down the walls of prejudice, shaking the inherent system of thinking of the Jews. It is this that makes the parable not just a moral story, but also a revolution in the way we look at others. Part 3, The Victim by the Road. Jesus begins, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers. They stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead." The road from Jerusalem to Jericho was notoriously dangerous. About 27 kilometers long, it was winding and tortuous, passing through many ravines and arid deserts. It was once called the Road of Blood because of the frequent robberies. In the story, the traveler became a victim of injustice, violence, and cruelty. He was robbed of his belongings, severely beaten, and most importantly, abandoned on the road. The image not only reflects the reality of that time, but also symbolizes people today, victims of war, poverty, social injustice, people abandoned in loneliness, wounded in the soul, lost people. No one cares. Part 4, The Priest and the Levite. Jesus continued, "By chance, a priest was going down the same road. When he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Then a Levite passed by and saw him, and passed by on the other side. Both of these men were people of high status in religious life. The priest was in charge of the temple's sacrifices, and the Levite was in charge of the worship. They were people well versed in the law and respected by the people. However, when they encountered a dying man, they chose to avoid him. Perhaps they feared being defiled by touching someone who appeared to be dead, which was forbidden by the law. Perhaps they were in a hurry to return home after serving. Or more simply, they feared being implicated by robbers who were still lurking. Whatever the reason, their attitude reflects an age-old reality. People often find excuses to avoid facing the responsibility of loving. And perhaps, if we look at ourselves, we are often like the priest and the Levite, choosing our own safety over the suffering of others. Part 5, The Good Samaritan. And then, the story takes an unexpected turn. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came near, and when he saw him, he was moved with compassion. He went to him, poured oil and wine on his wounds, and bandaged them. Then he put him on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The surprise is here. The character whom the Jews despised and excluded was the one who stopped, bent down, and touched the pain. He not only felt pity, but also turned that love into concrete actions. He bandaged, carried him, cared for him, and even left money for the innkeeper to continue taking care of. His love transcended all limits. It overcame ethnic hatred, personal fear, and social prejudice. He transformed a stranger into a neighbor with his own hands and heart. Part 6. The core meaning. After finishing the story, Jesus asks, which of these three was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The lawyer is forced to answer, the one who showed him mercy. And Jesus says, go and do likewise. This conclusion is the heart of the parable. The neighbor is not a group of people defined by blood, status, or religion, but anyone who is in need of us. Part 7. Contact today. Today, the parable of the Good Samaritan is still valid. The victim on the Jerusalem-Jericho road could be a migrant who left his homeland, wandering in search of a place to live. A poor person, lacking food and clothing, living on the margins of society. A sick person alone in the hospital, with no one to visit. A victim of domestic violence, of war, of social oppression. And today's priest, or Levi, could be us, when we are too absorbed in work, when we choose safety and convenience, and leave others in need. The Good Samaritan invites us to become people who know how to stop, to touch pain, and to love without calculation. Part 8. Deep reflection. In addition to its moral significance, the parable also contains a profound spiritual dimension. Christian theologians have read in the character of the victim on the roadside the image of humanity fallen by sin, wounded, crushed by evil and death, unable to save itself. The Good Samaritan is a figure of Jesus. He comes from a place of contempt. What good is Nazareth? But he bends down to heal humanity. He bandages the wounds with oil and wine, symbols of the sacraments, of grace and love. He brings humanity to the image of the church, where people are cared for and nourished. And he pays the price with his own life on the cross. Thus, the parable not only teaches us to live in love with others, but also reveals the saving love of God himself, who does not abandon humanity but comes to bring eternal life. Part 9. Our call. Jesus does not let the parable stop at a theoretical lesson. He ends with a concrete command, go and do likewise. This is a call to action. Love is not just a passing emotion, but a firm choice and a concrete action. Helping a poor person, comforting a suffering person, forgiving someone who has offended you, that is how to live the parable of the Good Samaritan in daily life. What matters is not the magnitude of the work, but the heart's willingness to give. A greeting, a smile, a caring gesture can become oil and wine to heal someone's wounds. This call resonates through time, challenging each of us today. Do we dare to be good Samaritans in the midst of an indifferent society? Part 10. Conclusion. The story of the Good Samaritan resonates as an immortal song of love that transcends borders, a declaration of universal compassion. It affirms that loving your neighbor as yourself is not a fanciful theory, but a vital choice, a path to eternal life. Today's world is full of barriers, national, ethnic, religious, class, even barriers in the human heart. But it is when we dare to step over those barriers, dare to stop before the pain of others, dare to give love without discrimination, that we truly become disciples of Jesus. And perhaps, only when we live like the Good Samaritan can we find eternal life. The life that the lawyer longed for long ago, and the life that every person is still searching for today. Thank you for joining Sting Stories in today's story, The Good Samaritan, Love Without Borders. Hopefully, through this parable, each of us is reminded to live with a sympathetic heart, to share and open our arms of love to everyone, no matter who they are. If you find the story meaningful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe so you don't miss out on future journeys with Sting Stories. See you in the next story, and wish you always be full of love and life.